Hi everyone, welcome to Geekster's YouTube channel. Happy Dhanteras to everyone. So today what we are going to see, today there is a free masterclass organized by Geekster on the topic design splitwise. So basically what it is a low level design problem, or you can say specifically, it is a machine coding round problem, which generally is a very famous interview problem, which is asked by a lot of companies. And I have also faced the same problem in almost like two, three companies now. And I have made a project on splitwise algorithm also, a splitwise application also as a college project during my college. So what is it? What is splitwise algorithm? We will discuss in detail, and we will also discuss like how low level design comes into play and how machine coding round is becoming important day by day in today's IT interviews. So let us like first introduce myself. Let me first introduce myself to everyone. So about me, my name is Sachit Agrawal. I am currently like I have served as software development engineer at Salesforce, and I have a like full-time role at Salesforce as well. So what about my experience in particularly at tech industry? So I have 13 plus approximately months of experience currently in ed tech industry. Currently, I'm associated with Geekster. I have approximately mentored and taught almost 1,000 students or more than that, in fact, as live lessons and also recorded lectures in both formats. And previously, like before Geekster, I was a full-time DSA instructor at Web Coding, and currently I am a full-time DSA instructor at Geekster itself. So about my like experiences, I have been into competitive programming where I have almost like reached the expert level. And if you know competitive programming, like I have solved some 500 problems across or code forces platform. So yeah, this is about me, about my qualifications, about my achievements, about my background. So coming back to the topic, you know about me maybe like a little bit, or maybe you have been learned from me in any of the batch. So coming to the topic is basically first we will discuss the agenda is first we will discuss the low level system design, or you can say the object oriented analysis and design, because currently low level we can correlate it with object oriented programming itself. Other principles, other paradigms are currently not into picture. So majorly focus is on object oriented analysis, that is object oriented programming, along with some advanced concepts. We will be discussing how machine coding round came into picture, and like what is the current problem statement we are going to solve. Then we will discuss how we are going to design the object oriented entire architecture, entire framework of the current problem. And then we will be able to code the solution, and we will be discussing the implementation part as well. And after all the implementation of the mandatory requirements, if the time allows us, we will discuss about some follow-ups, or you can say some further exploration of how you can excel in low-level system design interviews, and what all you have to explore before going to an interview where a low-level system design machine coding round will be asked to you. Okay, so this is the agenda. I hope like everyone is excited for this recorded session. Currently, like it is being recorded, but for you, it will be like uh, kind of interactive session, because I will be asking questions and you can reply me on the YouTube chat or the Geekster portal as well. It is your wish. But please try to be interactive. Please try to have a notebook along with you. Please try to note some things down. Please try to design the system on paper. So it will help you as well in basically in order to able to understand how the system is working, how the entire design of Splitwise app is working. So this was the agenda. First, we will discuss the machine coding round, how the machine coding round looks like, and what is the importance and what is it actually. So first thing, like I have taken this like almost entire content, the problem statement from Work at Tech website. So kudos to them. So first thing, introduction. Until recently, the general interview process for software engineers consisted of two, three rounds, as we all know. Like I've also given some interviews in some product-based companies where I have faced some rounds on data structures, algorithms, object-oriented programming as well. Some core concepts like DBMS, database management system, operating system, OS, computer networks as well, that is CN. So all these things I have explored I've like encountered in my interviews, in my on-campus interviews. But when it comes to interviews in some companies where you can say the bar set by the company, set by the interviews is little higher. they are starting asking machine coding round. They are starting involving a round which is based on machine coding, which is based on system design and particularly low level system design. So you obviously will be basically encountering a lot of DSA problems in your interviews, and you will be maybe good enough till now, or maybe you are currently learning about data structures algorithms. This is the most important topic currently that you have to explore. But apart from that, you might have to basically learn as well the machine coding round when you are giving interviews in some specific companies. For example, currently like Flipkart is asking a lot of machine coding rounds, Uber is asking, Swiggy, Ola, Cred, and a lot of other companies like maybe you can say Tower Research, like big HFT companies, high frequency trading companies like Tower Research. Then you can say some other companies like Sprinkler is also asking machine coding rounds, or you can say low level questions in their interviews. So these are the companies which are generally like trending, shifting towards machine coding rounds slowly. They are not like completely removing the data structures and algorithms from their interviews. But yeah, this is also coming into the picture because as we all know, like data structures and algorithms, like there are 500 problems, 600 problems. So everyone like after 6 months preparation, after 4 months preparation, after 8 months preparation, some amount of preparation, they are good enough with data structures, algorithms question. So the problem solving testing of the candidate based on DSA is reducing day by day. So there should be a better way in order to judge the candidates, in order to judge their skills, that how are they better with respect to other candidates. And there comes the machine coding round. So how does a machine coding round looks like? So machine coding round generally involves a design problem. Like there will be a problem statement given to you, and there will be a time allotted to you, maybe 2 hours, maybe 1 hour, maybe 1.5 hours, something like that. Generally it is in between 1 hour to 2 hours, and you will be required to design and code a clean, modular, extendable solution. What does it mean? Firstly, you have to write a clean code. You have to follow some object-oriented programming principles if you are coding in Java, if you are coding in C++ or JavaScript or any other language which follows OOPS principles. So you have to write a clean code. You do not have to basically repeat the code. There should be some design principles involved in it, like maybe DRY, that is do not repeat yourself. There should be some object-oriented programming principles like abstraction and inheritance, and you can say polymorphism involved in it, so that it is clean and it is extendable. Extendable means it is scalable, that tomorrow if you want to expand the solution to more users or to more, you can say, depth, or more features, you want to include more features, so you are able to do that with the same business logic, with the same application only. You have to do minimalistic changes in the code base. So that is nothing but extendable. And how you can make the solution extendable? Obviously you can make the solution extendable by writing modular code, that is breaking the entire piece of code in different functions, different methods, different classes, different interfaces. So this is like you have to use modular kind of programming. You have to break the entire piece of code in smaller modules. You have to not write a code in single Java file, single dot Java source code file. You have to break it into different files and organize them using packages or whatnot. So this is like you have to write the code modular so that it is easy to read, easy to debug, easy to maintain, and obviously easy to extend, easy to make the solution extendable and scalable. So this is like what is the requirement of a machine coding round. Obviously, you cannot make the 100% perfect solution in a 2 hour coding round, but this is what is expected, that you will be, as if you are as close as a good solution, a clean code, you are, your chance round increases. So an example, like there are various examples of machine coding rounds. Like example which we are going to discuss today will be design a splitwise algorithm. There are other applications also, like a simpler, easier variations, like design a snake and ladder application, snake and ladder game, design a chess validator game, design a tic-tac-toe game. So these are based on games. Then there are some other applications, for example, design uh, some intermediate application you can discuss, like maybe design a elevator system, design a parking lot system, design a ATM machine, and some like more advanced can be design, for example, Splitwise, design Facebook, design Amazon, design maybe WhatsApp. So these are like different, based on different difficulties. There are a lot of questions which can be asked in your machine coding round. Currently, we are focusing on splitwise algorithm. So we will be focusing on like easier part of the splitwise algorithm, because like Splitwise algorithm is actual app. It is actual app on App Store as well, and on Google, like Google, you can say Android Play Store as well. So in both the application stores, you can find the application. So it is like used like maybe by millions of users. So we cannot go to that extendability, go to that scalable solution, go to that available solution, but we will try to be have a good enough clean code solution that we can give in our interview, give in our machine coding round to the interviewer, so that he is able to like ask some questions and he is interested in our candidate. Okay. So this is generally, you can say, followed by a code review process. Like first, what is going to happen is you will be given approximately 1 hour or 2 hour in order to write the solution, in order to think about the design, in order to code the solution. And then whatever code you have written, if it is working, if it is perfectly fine, so there will be a code review process where interviewer will be assigned to you and you will be discussing the solution which you have coded with your interviewer, and he will be asking some clarification questions to you that like why have you done this, what is the design goal, what is the design pattern you have used, what is the object oriented principle you have used, and maybe what is the scope of improvement, what is the like more scalable solution which you can think of, and something like that. So there will be some questions revolving around the code which you have written in the machine coding round in an interview, and that will be like uh, finalizing your fate, whether you are going to the next round or you are getting selected, or basically you are getting rejected, or whatever is happening. Like if the interviewer is the if this interview is the last interview, obviously the selection will be either accepted or rejected. Or if it is not the last interview, then maybe you are uh, going to the next machine coding round, or maybe going to the HR round, whatever. So this is like a decider, because currently not very much people, not very much majority of people know about machine coding round, how to solve it. Although they know object oriented principles, they know very good uh, how to write clean code, but they are not familiar enough with the entire scenario of machine coding around. So there comes like an opportunity where you can excel, where you can basically be having a skill which you can implement, which you can use in order to clear the interviews. Okay, so this is about the introduction of about how machine coding looks like and what is the general format. We will be discussing the problem shortly, the example that is design split by shortly. But this is also important that I have to explain you how a machine coding round looks like, because having no idea about the problem is like very lethal. It will be better to have a general idea that how we are going to solve it. Okay, next thing, what are the expectations? Obviously, format, the question format will be given to you, but what are the expectations that the machine coding round is having with you, or the company is having with you? So since like almost all companies have a similar judging criteria in the machine coding round, so these are the few pointers which you can keep in your mind while giving a machine coding round. What are those pointers? Obviously, your code should be clean. It should be working. Like it should not be that you are writing a partial solution. Partial solution will like most probably have a negative impact uh on your, you can say, score. So it should be working. It should be properly working. Whatever the mandatory requirements are there in the question, they should be fully functional, and it should be demonstrable. Like you should be able to demonstrate whatever the code you are writing. Next point, it should be functionally correct. What does it mean? Like you should write the your code in like different modules, in different functions, in different classes, and uh, based on the requirements. Like for example, if the requirement is there will be some input and output based on terminal, like terminal based input output, maybe a menu driven program, maybe a you can say terminal based program. So it should be like a function should be there in order to take the entire input, and it will be calling some services, it will be calling some uh, operations which are going to be performed on the data, on the models. So it should be functionally correct. There should be different functions having some different meanings. So there is a, like in the solid principle, there is first letter which is S, that is single responsibility. So every function should ideally have single responsibility. That is, if a function is there which is interacting with the database, it should only interact with database. If a function is there which is basically in having, which is serving as a medium, serving as a interface in between the models, in between the data and the client side, that is the user, it should act like that only. So different functions should have different functionalities, different responsibilities. Next module, like next, you can say point, it is same as the second point, almost same, that it should be modular and readable. Your code should be modular, your code should be easy to debug. Obviously, if your code is having more comments, it is more divided into small functions, having 5, 5, 10 lines, it should be better. It will be better. Separation of concern. Now, what I told, like single responsibility principles, separation of concerns should be addressed. That all your business logic should be in different, you can say, source code or different class files. Then all your, I'm talking with respect to Java currently, all your entire data access layer, that is the all your interaction with the database should be in the different functions and should be in different packages. And all your client side application, all your application presentation layer should be in different, you can say, different packages and different class files. So there should be separation of concerns. This file or this package should be dealing with a particular responsibility of particular concern. This file should be dealing with particular concern. This file should be dealing with particular concern. And they should be like interacting with each other without violating any of the design principle, without violating any of the clean code, you can say clean code methodologies. Okay. Next point, code should easily accommodate new requirements with minimal changes. As I said, code should be scalable. That if tomorrow a new requirement, a new functionality which you want to implement in your code comes, so you will be required to change minimum amount of code, minimum lines of code in order to introduce that new functionality in your code. So it should be easily scalable. It should be easily extendable. The solution should be easily extendable. This is the next expectation. So expectations are like high, they are good enough. Then there should be a main method from where the code can be easily testable. Like there will be some unit test which can be run on your code, or there can be some user defined test cases which you can use on your code in order to test whether all the functionalities, all the separation of concerns, like all the modules are working properly or not. And generally, like if the interview is not front end interview, it is not front end machine coding round. So UI will not be required. The user interface will not be required. You will be required to only have a user interface that is dealing with the terminal, that is a menu driven program, that in terminal, in, you can say, if you are coding in VS Code, in the same terminal you will be giving the output, and in the same terminal you will be getting the output. So there will be not a separate UI, there will be not a front end, you can say, in your application. The UI is generally not required unless we are talking about front end machine coding now. There might be, but uh, like in a 2 hour interview, 2 hour machine coding round, it is generally what is not expected. Okay. So these are all the expectations, that what are the expectations with you in a machine coding round or in a low level system design round. Next point. Next point is how to tackle. So this slide is also like taken from the same website as I told, that is work at the rate tech. So you can follow that website. There are some good blogs. I have taken the problem statement as well from that website only. So there was an article based on how to tackle a machine coding round, how to basically solve the machine coding round part by part, what to take first, then what to take, then what to solve. So first point, what they have mentioned and what I agree also is, after reading the problem, first of all, you have to read the problem carefully. You have to read all the requirements, all the input and output, sample input, output examples, all the constraints, everything, whatever is mentioned in the question, everything you have to clearly read. And if it is live, like there is an interviewer in front of you, or there is a maybe a chat bot that from where you can ask the doubts, and you will be getting some reply. So you should have to ask some clarification questions. That my question is that, do I have to create a UI as well if it is not mentioned? So some clarification question will come. No, no need to make a UI. Another question might be like, do I have to like, do I have to also use some data or that database also, or can I use in-memory database? That is, I can have some data structures, and in the same code, I am storing the data. And obviously, when the program will terminate, the data will be lost because you are storing in memory only in the same machine where you are running the code. So these are some clarification questions which you might ask. And if you have any doubt in any of the lines in the problem statement or requirement or expectation, whatever, you can ask, and you should clarify before starting with the solution, before going to the solution. So do not assume anything. Very important. Do not assume anything that If it is not mentioned in the problem statement, I will assume that UI is not required. I will assume database is not required. Do not assume anything if it is not mentioned. Please try to discuss it with the interviewer so that there is no assumption made by your side. You are clear with your with your solution. And because before getting to the solution, you have just made the clarification that I will be not requiring currently to write the database, and database actually database connection will not be required, or you can say front end will not be required, or some functionality will not be required. Okay. So ask as many clarifying questions as you can in, but don't take the entire time in doing so. Try to do this entire problem statement analysis and all the clarifying questions in starting 5, 10, 15 minutes. That's it. Like try to get this to the solution as early as possible, but with 100% knowledge, 100% information. Okay. So next point, getting to the solution, like how you are going to approach the solution. So please don't directly jump on the coding part. Please don't directly jump into the implementation part. Do not write the code directly. That okay, you know the problem statement, what you have to do. So you are directly typing and writing class files. You are writing the code. Like similarly, what you do in data structure algorithms, you directly jump on to generally the coding solution if you know the question already. But here, even if you already know that if the question is obviously design Amazon, you know how Amazon looks like, how Amazon what all components Amazon have. But even if you know the basic idea, abstract knowledge, but still do not directly jump onto the implementation, because if you are going to directly jump onto the implementation, it is surely that some of the expectations will not meet. Because if you are directly jumping onto implementation, you will not have an idea that what all functions I am going to make, what all modules, what all layers, or what all separation of concerns I am going to follow, what all design principles, design patterns I'm going to follow, what all object-oriented principles I'm going to follow. You will not know all of these. So before going to the solution, please think about all of these and have a prototype, have a design of your solution. So that is nothing but a UML diagram of your solution. Try to write all the classes, like this class, this user class will be containing these data members, these member functions. This driver class will be only to input and output the driver code. Then there will be a database access layer, which will be dealing with how you are going to access the data or how you are going to put the data. That is CRUD operations. Either create the data or read the data or edit the data basically, or you can say update the data, like all these, delete the data. All these operations will be there. Then uh, after you are basically thinking about how you are going to design the solution, what all classes will be involved, what all interfaces will be involved, how classes are going to, how two classes are be going to related with each other, maybe using inheritance is a relationship, or maybe composition, that is has a relationship. How the two classes are going to be related with each other, you have to think about that as well. So do not jump to directly solution. This is our most important point. First, think about the solution. First, think about the design and then go to the solution. And while thinking about the design, please try to follow some design principles, some design patterns. So there is a lot of design principles, a lot of design patterns, but most basic, most famous design principles are solid design principles. Most famous design patterns are singleton design pattern. Then although design pattern singleton is not used that much, but it is famous in interviews at least. Then there is strategy design pattern. Then there is observer design pattern. There are a lot of 23 almost design patterns uh, available, or you can say which you can read about. So if you know some design principles, if you know some design patterns, it should be good enough to implement those in your coding, to implement those in your implementation, so that your code is more readable, it is more clean, it is clean code. Next point, estimate how much time will it take you to basically write the code, because you don't have to just think about the design, like spend the entire time just thinking about the design only. You also have to code the solution. So keep in mind that how much time are you going to take in order to code the solution. Generally, in a 2-hour machine coding round, please you can try to give almost half an hour or 1 hour in thinking the solution, and half an hour or 1 hour in coding the solution. Like this balance you should have to create. Apart from the design, estimate some time for creating the main method. Like if there is a front end required, so maybe a client side interface that proper front end will be required, or maybe a application interface that is API will be required, or maybe a simple driver code input output from the terminal. Like whatever is required, try to write the code, try to estimate the code, that how much code you are going to write in the main method, and estimate the time, that what how much amount of time you are going to take in doing that. Then uh, if like while coding, if your solution is taking a lot of time, so you can first focus on the main problem statement, main, you can say main requirements, mandatory requirements, and then you can focus on the optional requirements. I am going to discuss like what all mandatory, what all optional requirements are in the problem, in the current problem statement. But if the time limit is less, if you are feeling that you will not be able to like completely do the entire justice to the problem, so first at least focus on the main mandatory requirements, even if they are simple enough. But please first do focus on mandatory requirements. Even if it is cool, even if it is that you will get some bonus points on optional requirements, but still do not go on the optional features. Like in DSA also, on lead code portal or on any other portal, you might have checked in the last there is a follow-up. Can you solve this problem in order of n time? So obviously you can do that follow-up if you have time remaining. But if you are not getting to the solution which is most optimized, obviously first you will think of a brute force approach. You will discuss a like maybe more time taking or more space complexity solution, but at least you are giving the solution. It is not like this thinking about the most optimal solution and not giving the brute force as well. So it is similar to that. Don't directly think about giving the most perfect solution with all the optional requirements also met. Please first try to give the solution which is at least tackling, which is at least solving all the mandatory requirements. That this is like at least you have to do. This is at least which you have to do in your solution. Do not think about optional requirements unless and until you have some time left. You have some extra time left. Okay. So do not prioritize an optional requirement over a mandatory requirement. If you focus more on extendability, that your solution is perfect, like currently it is on 100 users, maybe tomorrow it is on 1 lakh user, 10 lakh user. So my solution is that good. Do not think about extendable solution. Do not think about future requirements. Just focus on current today. What is the current requirements, and that to mandatory requirements. Because if you're not able to at least like even give the solution of the mandatory requirements, then it is a red flag. Like it is a negative impact on your score, that you are not able to give a brute force approach. So when I am taking an analogy with DSA, so you are not able to give a solution which is solving all the mandatory requirements. So how come I will be able to give you a chance in order to build my solution, in order to build my entire system? And as I told that, uh, try to think about the solution by drawing it, and you can follow some UML conventions in order to draw that. But like even if you do not know UML, it is not it is not that much of a bad point. It is optional. Okay, so I hope you maybe got a little bit idea of how you are going to tackle a machine coding round solution, how you are going to the solution, how you are uh, basically first before going to the solution, you are going to extract the entire information from your interviewer by asking some relevant, some important clarifying questions which you think. And then obviously you are going to implement the entire logic. You are going to code the solution. So while coding, you have to generally like code fast, because the entire time most probably will be taken by design. It will be taken by design, that you are going to design the entire solution, that there will be 5 classes, 10 classes, some packages involved, how are classes involved, how are classes related with each other. So all this will take time. So coding, like generally, it will be lesser time for you to code the solution. So please try to code fast so that you are able to meet all the expected requirements. And obviously it should be working while coding fast. Don't do mistakes that you are not able to write a working code, that there are a lot of bugs. Obviously there will be bugs, but you should have some time in order to solve that bug, in order to basically remove those bugs from your code, that is debug your code. And like have some examples, have some sample input. If it is given in the question, good enough. If it is not given in the question, then maybe try to have some examples so that you can explain your solution to the interviewer. Okay. And if it is possible, like it is optional, but if it is possible, try to do exception handling. Try to handle all the corner cases like we do in data structures algorithms. Like for example, in array problems, we it is good enough if it is better that you are handling the code when the array size is zero, if the array contains negative elements, if array is containing only one element, something like that. Some corner cases, some uh, like cases where exceptions can occur, runtime error can occur. For example, division by zero can occur, no input given or invalid input given. These kind of things, it is better to handle. If you have time, you can handle those exceptions. It will have a better impact. Like among all the candidates, you will be ranked higher, you will be given a higher score if you are having some exception handling in your code, if you are having some advanced features in your code, which others do not have. But obviously, this is optional. If you are able to do the entire main code, main mandatory requirement, then only go to the exception handling and other stuff. Okay. And this is important. This is underlined like this, you know, from data structures algorithms as well, that please write readable code. Please use proper, meaningful names. Use comments as possible, that double slash or slash star, whatever. Use some comments that this function will be doing this, this function will be doing this, or have some meaningful names of the functions, of the classes, of the variables, of the interfaces and all. Have some meaningful names so that you can basically, if time is like less, you can omit some comments, you can not write some comments if the functions are itself like self-explanatory, if the name of the function is self-explanatory. Okay. And generally, like the ID, it is not a requirement from the machine coding round interview from the interviewer that you have to code in this particular ID only, in this particular online solution, in online environment only. You can code your solution in any ID you want. So generally try to take a better ID, maybe VS Code, maybe maybe a VS Code, maybe IntelliJ ID, maybe Sublime also. Like you can prefer, you can take any of the ID which you think it is better. Don't try to take like some older variation, older versions, or simpler IDs which do not even give you autocomplete feature. Obviously, you should have a ID which can give you autocomplete feature, which can give you some like error checks, like compile time checks that underline, so that it is easy for you to code, easy to you debug, easy for you to debug the solution. Okay. And the last point. So whenever like whatever time you are getting in order to code the solution, after coding, obviously you have to demonstrate the code in front of the interviewer, as I told. So you should have a proper understanding of your code. You should have some good examples of your code in order to explain the solution, because it is no point if you have written the entire solution perfectly, very good, and you are not able to communicate your answer to the interviewer. So your demonstration is also important. How you are basically explaining your uh, written piece of code to the interviewer. So while demonstrating, make sure to give a high level overview, like how your solution is working, how the entire architecture looks like. And then you can like go to each module and explain the module, that this module is for this module is for this. And I have used this design principle, this design pattern, this object-oriented programming principle, and whatnot. So tell the interviewer about all the requirements, that you have completed these all these mandatory requirements. And if you have also solved some of the optional requirements, you can mention that this code is also solving, this code is also taking care of this optional requirement also, which was optional, which was a follow-up. And I have like make the solutions such like it is easily extendable. Maybe I have created some classes which can be easily extended, or I have created some interface which can be easily implemented, something like that. Or I have created some constants, some enums, so that they can be added. Like if tomorrow some more enums comes, some more constants come, I can directly add them in the code easily, with minimum changes. So you have to discuss all of these with your interview, and after running on solution on the sample input, on the input given by the interviewer, or by the example which you have thought of your from your own mind, you can give a sample input, you can run your code on a sample input, and you can ask the interviewer that you can also try to test my code with your inputs as well, and I will be explaining whatever the output is uh, of the input which is given by you. So this is how demonstration should look like. So it is like, obviously demonstration is the easiest part, uh, if you are good with communication skills. If you have done the code exactly, like cleaner code, readable code, and also before code, you should be able to have a good design ready with you so that you can code exactly the way you want. So this is how you are going to tackle machine coding round. First, reading the problem statement, then designing the problem, designing the object-oriented classes and objects and interpretation and whatnot, all the relationships. Then going to the implementation, and finally having the interviewer ex explaining all those implementation parts, all those principles. Okay, so this was about how to tackle a machine coding round. Like from starting till end. Now, obviously, we are going to discuss the first design problem which you might be facing, or you might be already having faced some of the problems, but this is how machine coding round will look like. We will discuss with the example. So we will go to the example. The example will of course be design splitwise. So you can like go through all these, you can take screenshots, I can share the notes as well of all these. It is your wish, whatever you want to do with these. If you want to write these notes in your notes, you can do that. Then we are going to the next topic. And also, like, since this is a recorded session, it does not mean that it is not interactive. Please, you can drop off all your comments, all your questions in the chat box wherever it is live. If it is on YouTube, you can drop your questions in the YouTube's comment section, or you can also ask us in the Geeksters portal if you are a like enrolled student, and we will be happy to solve all the problems related with this session. So now we are going to like shift our agenda, shift our agenda towards the problem, towards the main, you can say, for what you are here. That is the problem statement, which is nothing but design splitwise. But before going to problem, I am again going to show you a diagram that how a problem solving analysis looks like. So see, if you are solving any problem, a machine coding round, obviously you have to do a design, you have to write a UML diagram. But before doing the design, as I told, please read the problem, please gather all the requirements, please like clarify what all assumptions you have made, what all things you are thinking that I will not include that, I will not include UI, I will not include database after clarifying. So this is all you can say. It is high level design, HLD. Then HLD, after HLD, there will be UML diagrams, as I told. All classes will be drawn, how classes are related with each other. And then, of course, the implementation, the coding part, which you are generally going to do using object-oriented programming principles. That is Java language, C++ language, and whatnot. Okay. And finally, part will be, which we are not going to do, but final part will be delivery. That is your code getting deployed using some DevOps principles like Docker, Kubernetes. But this is also not mandatory. Like you should know the cycle, but you should know that currently our focus are on these two steps, that is design and implementation, and some basic part of HLD also, some basic part of high level design also, that you are able to at least design the entire logic and then write the classes and interfaces which are related. Okay, so this is nothing but problem solving process or software development process or agile methodology. This entire cycle of feedback and all the implementation goes in approximately 15 days in actual companies. So next point is the problem statement. Now we are going to obviously start with the design splitwise application. So you can take notes, you can take pen and paper with you so that you are able to get to the solution along with me. Okay, so let us discuss what is a problem statement. In the problem statement, it is given design an expense sharing application where you can add your expenses and split it among different people. What does it mean? You have to design an application similar to, maybe you can say similar to Khata book application if you might have encountered it. So expense sharing application where people can share some expenses, where there will be transactions involved. Not actual transactions, but there will be some basically some user who will be a creditor, and there will be some users maybe it can be one user, or it can be multiple users who will be debtors. Like one user will be giving the expense, will be having the amount paid by one user, and it will be like divided among all the users in the format whichever is mentioned in the input. So you have to design an expense sharing application where you can add the expenses and split it among different people. There will be a group of people, and app will do what? App will keep balances between people, that who owns how much amount to whom. That this person A, this user one, owes rupees X amount to person U2, that is other user U2, in a particular group based on some particular expenses, based on some particular transactions. So this is the problem statement, like the broad overview of the problem statement. Obviously, uh, this will not be the entire problem statement. There will be entire specifications, entire requirements analyzed. There will be entire requirements written down. So first of all, the mandatory requirements are coming. And before that, there is example I am like discussing. Maybe like let us assume that there are four friends currently, four users are using this application, and those four friends are, let's suppose the user IDs are nothing but U1, U2, U3, U4. So these are some four friends, and they are going to a trip to Manali. So they want to share the expenses, they want to handle all the transactions whichever are involved in the entire trip. So at different events, different people pays for everyone. That is maybe when they are paying for hotel, so person U1 is paying for the hotel for everyone. Maybe when they are paying for trekking, when they are going to trek, or maybe when they are going for sightseeing, U2 is paying for everyone. And maybe when they are going for a like ride, for a maybe adventurous ride. So not maybe all of the people are going to a ride. Maybe U1 and U4 are not going to a ride, but U3 is paying for U2 as well as U3 itself himself. So this is like what all different transactions can occur. Different people having paying the different amount at different events. So at different events, different people pays for everyone or for some of the people. Now after the trip, they want to know how much each needs to pay and to whom. After entire trip is done, user one wants to know that how much balance he have, or how much he owes to anyone, or how much everyone owes to him. Like maybe you two has to owe, you two has to basically give to you one some amount. Maybe you one have to give some amount to you three. Maybe you one have to give some amount to you four, or maybe he has or she has no amount to take or to give to you four. So something like that. So you have to list down all the possible balances which each person can have with respect to the other people. And then the requirements. So requirements are like a lot of requirements are mentioned. I will discuss the example using a sample input output, but let us first discuss the requirement. So how will the user look like? So they have mentioned a user, the person who are using the application, will have four fields: the user ID, that is U1, U2, U3, U4, so on. So it will be most probably a string. Name as well, like my name, your name, whatever is your full name. So it will be a string as well. There will be an email ID. You can take email ID as a string as well. And there will be a phone number, mobile number, that will also be a phone number, will also be a string as well. You can take it as long variable, but I will be taking it as a string variable. So these are four variables which are associated with the user. And what is a user? User is a data, it is an object, it is a user is a class, and we have to create different users for our application. So user will be a class, and in particular in class also, what it is the data. It is storing the actual data of a user, all the fields of a user, and also like some functionalities, some behavior of those users. So user will most probably be told as a model. It is a model. What does model means? Model means a class or object in order to store the data and in order to apply some perform some operations on the data. So model, user will be there. Then next model will be expense, the type of expense. And there are, in the particular example, in the particular problem requirement, there are three type of expenses: either equal or exact or percent. What does it mean by expense? I will explain you using a sample input output. But there can be three type of expenses in the application. Either the expense will be equal, that person U1, let's take example here only. Let's suppose U1 is paying for hotel, and since hotel, like all will be staying in the hotel, so he's paying for everyone equal amount of time. Let's suppose equal amount of you can say money. So if let's suppose he is paying 1200 rupees for everyone, so what he will say, U1 is paying for the hotel. I am just showing you it is paying for the hotel. How much he is paying for? He is paying for a total amount of 1200, and the total amount will be equally split among all the remaining users, among all the three remaining users, that is U2, U3, and U4. So it will be equally split. Like what will be the input format? I will tell you in the sample input output only. Maybe in the input format, equal will be in the last. So U1 will have to pay for the hotel of 1200 rupees, and it will be split among the remaining users equally. That is, all these three users will have to give U1 after the trip is done. That you have paid us, like paid for us 400 rupees each, 400, 400, 400. So U2 will owe 400 to U1, U3 will owe 400 to U1, U4 will also owe 400 to U1, because hotel, like everyone stayed in hotel. So 1200 will be equally split among all the three remaining users. Okay, this is first type of transaction, equal, where the entire amount is equally divided among the remaining users. It is not necessary that the, like all the remaining users will be there. There might be only two users. Maybe not U4 is there. So this 1200 will be equally divided among U1, U2, and U3. That is, you can say this 1200 that U1 owes will be equally divided among three parts, and the remaining two parts, that is U2 and U3, will say that we have to owe uh like 600 and 600 rupees each to U1. Okay. So it does not include the amount which U1 himself has to pay. Like if the total amount is 1200, so it does not include U1's amount, U1's share of amount. That is 1200 is a total amount which get, he will have to get from the remaining users. So like if let's suppose different users are getting 400 as a share. So U1 will also have a 400 share, but he is not adding that 400 in the transaction. What it means is, if their total, the amount of hotel cost is for one night is 1600. So he's not saying 1600 is the cost in the application. He's saying 1200 is the cost. Okay. For the remaining users, 1200 is the cost. For himself, 400 is there, but he is not including that. He's not including that 400. This is the first type of input of expense, which is equal expense. Next type of expense is exact. For example, uh, that first user, maybe they are all going to Mall Road, they are all purchasing some items. So user two, let's suppose, bought all the items. He did the payment for all the items. So this is all the shopping. U2 is doing all the shopping, and he's saying that different people might have different amount of shopping which is being done by different users. So for example, two other people also might have done shopping. U3 has done shopping, U4 has also done shopping, and they have different amount of balance which they have to give to, which they owe to U2. Maybe U3 have, let's suppose, let's suppose 100 rupees, and U4 has, let's suppose, 200 rupees. So in total, U2, in total amount, U2 will have to get, he will get how much amount? He will get 100 plus 200, 300 amount. This is exact amount. Like U3 exactly have to give 100 rupees to U2. U4 will exactly have to give 200 rupees to U2. And in total, obviously, the total amount will be 100 plus 200. So this is the second type of expense, which is exact. So exact means like whatever users are involved in debt list, in the list of debtors who have to give the amount, they will be having the exact amount. That U3, okay, 100 amount exactly. U4, okay, 200 amount exactly. And to whom? To U2, who have paid for everyone. How much amount he have paid? How much amount he have to get? He have to get 300 rupees. Okay. Next type, the percentage type, and you might know like by name itself. For example, U2 is having still spent 300 rupees, but instead of exact, now the input is like percent. That up from this 300, maybe we can say 75% is for U3 and remaining 25% is for U4. That is, out of these 300, 75% of 300 is being being split among U3, and the 25% of 300, whatever the amount is. I am not good in mathematics, but 25% of 300 will be owed by, will be owed by U4 to whom? To U2. That U4 will owe 25% of 300 rupees to U2. So these are the three types of transactions currently. These might be scalable, this might be extendable. There might be some other transaction expenses which can come, but currently there are three types of transactions, three types of expenses. Okay. Next requirement. User can add any type of amount. any type of expense, and it can split it any type of users, any amount of users. For example, like user can add 100 rupees also, 1 rupee also, 1000 rupees also, 10 lakh rupees also, whatever. But obviously amount will be positive, that you can assume. Otherwise you can do except for handling. But currently I'm assuming amount is like valid, it is positive, and expense is also valid, it is either equal or it is exact or it is percent. Either of these three expenses are there in the input. And split, he can do it among all the users, among one user only, like among just one other user, or maybe two other users, maybe three other users. It can be split among any number of users which are available in the system. Next point, the percent and amount provided should have decimal, like it should be correct up to two decimal places. For example, if the total amount is 100, and if the first person owes 66% amount and second person owes 33% amount, so like roughly 100 will be like 66.66 rupees to U1 or whatever the person one is, and approximately 33.33 rupees to the second person. So it should be correct up till two decimal places. So you have to take a double variable. The amount should be double variable. It should not be integer, because you have to be correct up till two decimal places. So all these requirements, you are getting idea of all the models of the classes which you are going to make. First class, user class. Second class, expense class. Then all these like input, how you are like how you are going to take the input, and what all different types of input can be there. Then next point is, in case of percent, you have to verify if the total sum of percentage is 100 or not. If it is not valid, do not take the input, like take it as invalid input. Or what does it mean? If we are saying that U1 owes 300 rupees to two users, first user is saying I am owing 50% of 300 rupees. Second person is saying I am owing, let's suppose, 20% of 300 rupees. So obviously there are only two users out of the total amount. 50 user is basically being owed by U2, and 20% is being owed by U3. So total percent which is being owed is only 70%. Where is the remaining 30%? So it is an invalid transaction. So this is the point, that if the transaction is invalid, if the total sum of percentage is not equal to 100, so do not take the transaction, do not take the expense. It is invalid expense. It is invalid input. Similarly, in case of expense also, like if it is not in the form of percentage, maybe if user 2 is saying, I owe 100 rupees. User 3 is saying, I am also owing only 100 rupees. And there are only two debtors, only these two owe, those who owe the money. So obviously the total sum is only 200, and the total amount which U1 is saying I have to get will be 300. So U1 wants to have to get 300 rupees, and U2 and U3 in total will give him only 200 rupees. So this is also invalid. So in case of exact exact notation, the total sum of shares 100 plus 100, it should be equal to the total amount which U1 have to get, which the creditor have to get. Otherwise, similarly to the previous case, it is also invalid. This is also invalid transaction. So you have to take care. They have explicitly mentioned you have to take care of the invalid input. You cannot say that input is invalid and app crashes or anything. So you have to take case of the invalid input. If the total sum of percentage is not equal to 100, print some invalid input maybe in the output. Or if the total sum of shares in case of exact type is not equal to the total amount, so again print not invalid, like not valid, invalid. Next point, application should have a capability to show expenses for a single user as well as balances for everyone. Like the queries will be, obviously these are the additions, these are the expenses which you are going to add. But based on those expenses, what you have to show? You have to show the balances of every person or of a particular user. For example, after U1 is like giving 200 rupees, if after U1 is giving 200 rupees to U2, after U1 is also giving 200 rupees to U3, and maybe U3 is giving 200 rupees to U4. So after all these transactions, if I ask you that what are the all the total balances, so you will print all of these balances. If I will ask you that what all U1, what all transactions are U1 involved in, so you will say U1 is involved in a transaction U1 to U2. U1 is also involved in a transaction U1 to U3. So you might be asked to print all the transactions of a particular user, or you might be asked to print all the transactions of all the users. So application should have a capability to show expenses for a single user or for all the users, whatever transactions are currently there in the system. I will show you the example, don't worry. Okay, next point. Next point. When asked to show balances, the application should show balances of a user with all the users when there is a no zero balance. That is, if like let's suppose there are four users, and if there is four users, and if u1 owes to u2 and u3 let's suppose owes to u1, that u1 have to give to u2, u3 have to give to u1, but u1 have no relation with u4, like neither he have to give to u4 nor he have to take from u4. So there will be no u1 to u4 transaction. Like you only have to print u1 to u2 and u3 to u1. You do not have to print u1 to u4 0 rupees or u4 to u1 0 rupees. You have to remove those transactions which are zero, which are zero. Only have to print with when it is non-zero, when it is more than or less than zero. Like more than zero means you have to give, or less than zero means you have to get. So anything like that. Amount should be rounded up to two decimal places, as I have already discussed. Like as I said, if it is 66.6666, so you have to round it to two decimal places. It can be 66.67, it can be 66.66. You have to round it up to two decimal places. That is the last bit. So these are the mandatory requirements. This you have to do. Like if you will not do any of these requirements, it will have a negative impact. So these are mandatory requirements. This is the question, at least what is expecting from you. At least you have to do all of these in your program. So these are the necessary things, the most important things you have to take care of. Next thing, how the input and output will look like. There will be three types of inputs. Let us see what are the three types of inputs. First, before taking any input, before having the queries, there will be some users which you have to manually create. Like the developer will have to manually create some users in order to test the input and output, in order to test the system. So there will be some few users which the currently user, the not the user, but the developer have to manually create. Okay. Then after creating some dummy users, dummy uh, 4 or 5 users for testing purposes, then you can take some inputs. For example, the first input will be expense. That the person who paid for all of one, for everyone, or for some of the people. How for how many people he has paid, that he have paid for three people, u3, u2, u4. He has paid for only two people, u2 or u3, and he has maybe only paid for only one user. So how many users he have paid for, and what all users he have paid for. For example, u1 have paid for, let's suppose u1 expense, u1 have paid for how many users? Three users, u2, u3, u4. So this is the meaning. Expense, who paid for? His ID. How many users he paid for? Three. What all the users he paid for? U2, u3, u4, space separated. Then what is the type of transaction? Either exact or equal or percent, either the three types. And then if the transaction is, let's suppose, exact. So in exact, what is the transaction? Like how much amount he have to get. In case of percent, how much amount he have to get, something like that. So this will be the input. That is which kind of expense is there. It is equal, or is it exact, or is it percent. Second, show. So show means for all users, show all the transactions. And show particular ID means for that user, show the transactions involved for that user. Show u1 means show all the transactions of u1 user, either as a debtor or as a creditor. Show means show all the transactions of all the users, u1, u2, u3, u4, whichever are non-zero balances. In output, whenever you are asked to print balance of a single user, as I told you, that show all the balances in the format, the creditor, sorry, the debtor who have to give the money, who owes money to whom, and how much amount. And in case of no balances, like none of the balances are there, he neither have to get any money, he nor have to give any money. So we have to print no balances. Like empty there should be no empty output. There should be some output, and that output will be, if I'm saying show user u4, and u4 is not involved in any of the transactions. So you will have to print no balances. That no balances are there for u4 user. In cases where user for which balance was asked owes money, they will be X, they will be Y otherwise. Like what it means, if the show user is a show U1, if it is show U1, and U1 have to give money to U2, so U1 will appear in the left. And let's suppose if U1 have to get money from U3. So it will be U3 will have to give money to U1. U1 will have to get money from U3. That is uh, he's in like positive side. He will have to get money of how much amount? Let's suppose 200 rupees. And here U1 have to give money to U2. How much amount? Let's suppose 100 amount. So this is like what means in the last output format. So you have to go through the input output format maybe by later on by pausing the video, because you will have to think how you are going to take the input using scanner, how you are going to print the output, maybe using some data structures or whatnot. So this is the input output format. Maybe if it is clear, well and good, but it will be even more clear when I will be showing you a sample input output, and also when I will be showing you the code, the implementation part. Okay. So sample input output. First, let's try to deep dive into the uh, requirements using a sample input output. So first, when there are no expenses, when there are no transactions, and if I ask you show for all the users, show the balances. So obviously there are no balances currently. You have not added any of the balance. So show means no balances. This is first input. This is the first output. Then show for U1 that for user one, what are the transactions involved for user one? Obviously, there are no transactions till now. There is no expense query. There is no expense addition. So obviously, again, no balances will be there. Then there is a first expense coming. That is user one is a creditor. He is giving the money. How much money is giving? Is he giving? 1,000 rupees. User one is giving 1,000 rupees. And like for which users he is giving the money? He is giving the money for 4 users. U1, U2, U3, U4. Like we have to include that user. If he also is involved in a transaction that in 1,000 rupees, he is also a contributor that maybe for hotel. If he also have to give the money in hotel. So we can say 4 users are there, U1, U2, U3, U4, and all of them have to give equal amount. That is out of 1,000 rupees. U1 will have to give 250, U2 will have to give 250, U3 will have to give 250, and U4 will have to give 250 to U1. So U1 giving 250 to U1, it is cancelled, like it is same. So the remaining transactions can be which are valid are nothing but U2 giving to U1 how much amount? 250 amount. This U3 giving to U1 how much amount? 250 amount. U3 giving to U1 how much amount? 250 amount. And finally, U4 also given to U1. How much amount? Again, 250 amount. Because it is equal partition, exactly divide the entire amount into among all the users. So U4 also given to U1. How much amount? 250 amount. So this is what is happening after the first expenses are added. After the first expenses added, these are all the 3 transactions which are in the database. Okay. Now I will ask you, show all the transactions where U4 is involved. So among all these transactions, which is the transaction where U4 is involved? This is the transaction. So output will be user 4 owes user 1 how much amount? 250. This is the transaction. Only this transaction is there, which is involving the show U4 transaction query. So user 4 owes user 1 250. This is the transaction. Okay. Now, if I ask you, show the transactions where user one is involved. So all these are the 3 transactions where user one is involved. So you will print all of these 3 transactions. User 2 owes the U1 250, user 3 also owes user 1 250, and user 4 also owes user 1 250. So this is the 4th output. This is the 4th query. For this 4th query, this is the entire output. Okay. Next, add expense. Next, add expenses. Expenses, again, U1 is giving the money. How much amount? 1250 amount. Okay, let us discuss. So U1 is again giving the money. How much amount? 1250 rupees. And for whom he is giving? He is giving for U2 and U3. So he is giving for U2 and U3. And exactly they are saying U2 owes 370 rupees. Okay. U3 owes 880 rupees. Okay. First validate. Is it 370 plus 880? Is it equal to 1250? I guess it is. I guess it is most probably. So it is a valid transaction. If it is a valid transaction, add in the database. So now U2 owes a 370 more. Like previously it owes a 250 to U1. Now it is owing 370 more rupees. So add 370 in this. And also U3 is also owing 880 more rupees. So U3 is also owing 880 more rupees to U1. Okay. Now, if I will ask you, show all the transactions, show all the expenses of all the users. So these are the transactions. U2 is owing U1 of roughly what is it? Roughly, I guess it is 620. So I have done cheating. So it is 620. Then user 3 is also owing to U1 how much amount? Roughly it is 1130. So print 1130. And user 4 is still owing U1 how much amount? 250. So these are the three transactions of the query show. So these are the output of the fifth query show of all the users after the second expense. Next query. I hope like things are getting clearer now. Next query. Add the expense. Add the expense. What is the expense? The expense is U4. U4 is giving money how much? 1200 rupees. And among whom it is getting split? It is getting split among four users. U1, U2, U3, U4. And it is a percent type that U1 is having 40% split. U2 is giving 20% split of the total amount. Then again 20%. Then again 20%. So first, let us validate. It is valid or not. 40 plus 20 plus 20 plus 20. How much is it? 60 plus 20, 80, 80 plus 20, 100. So yeah, it is 100% correct. It is an input which is valid. So it is a valid input. So 40% of 1200, how much is it? I guess 40% of 1200 will be 40 into 1200 divided by 100, which will be, we can say roughly 12, 24, 36, 48, 480. It will be 480 rupees. It will be 480 rupees. How much this will be? It will be 240 rupees. This will be also 240. This will be also 240 rupees. So U4 now have to get a U1, like he will have to get money from U1 or U1 owes money. How much? U4 480 rupees. Previously, U4 have to give money to U1 250, but now U1 have to give money to U4, which is 480. So essentially, what will happen? This transaction will vanish, and in this total amount, we will subtract 250. We will subtract 250. Essentially, what is happening? First, U4 have to give to U1 250 rupees. Now U1 have to give U4 480 rupees. So essentially, in a nutshell, in summary, U1 have to give U4 480 minus 250 rupees. Next transaction, U4 have to get money from U2. How many? How much? 240. Okay, so it was not a transaction till now. So U2 have to give money to U4 240 rupees. U3 also have to give money to U4. How many? How much? Not how many, but how much? It is again 240. And U4 giving money to U4. So like same user on left and right side. So it is nullified. It is cancelled out. So these are the transactions which we can say after this expense is adding. Now, if I will say show user one among all these transactions, where are the transactions where user one is involved? This is the transaction, this is the transaction, this is the transaction. So I will print all the three transactions where user one is involved. These are the three transactions. User one owes 480 minus 250, which is 230 rupees. User two owes U1 still 620, and user three owes user one still 1130. So this is the sixth output. And finally, I will ask you print all the expenses. So these are the 5 expenses. So most probably the output will be containing 5 transactions, and whatever the amount is, and whatever is the like over who owes the money, and whoever he owes it to, that will be the right hand side. And whatever amount is there, you will write that. So all these 5 transactions will be the last output. I hope the question is clear, like what you have to print, what is the input, what is the output, and what is the specific requirements. Okay. In this particular example, there was no invalid input, but if I will say this last percent is 10%. So obviously 40 plus 20 plus 20, 80% plus 10% will be 90% only. So it will become invalid. So do not take invalid inputs. That is also clear to you. Okay. So now we have discussed sample input output. We have discussed how to take the input format, output format, and the mandatory requirements. So now the last point is, before coming to the solution, the last point is expectations, which we have already discussed. What are the expectations? Working demonstrable code, functionally correct code, modular readable, separation of concern should be addressed, and do not write everything in a single file. Please try to write the code in such a manner so that minimum changes will be required to add new requirements. There should be a main method in order to take the input and print the output. That is, there should be a driver code, the input output code, where all the input output is handled. And try to write unit test cases if it is possible, if the time is allowing you. And no need to create a graphical user interface. And one more expectation should be there. And if it is not mentioned, you should clarify that there is no need to have a database. You can do in memory. You can do in memory. What does in memory means? You can store the data in any data structures in the program itself, like wherever the program is running in the same machine itself. So in memory database or in memory, you can say cache will be required in memory database. No need to have a separate database. No need to have SQL, no SQL, anything like that. So these are the expectations. Okay. One more point. Optional requirements. These we will see in the last. Optional requirements. Please don't focus on optional requirements currently, because first, obviously, the foremost point into our interview, into our machine coding round will be solving all the mandatory requirements. Then obviously you have to come to the optional requirements. So we are not discussing the optional requirements as of now. I will be giving you the optional requirements as a homework. And the last point in the optional requirement is also very, very important. But this will be discussed if we are having some time left, obviously. And it is like written in bold also in the question itself. Please do these only if you have time left. You can write your code such that these can be accommodated without changing your code. You should try to write the code in order to basically add these optional requirements later on. Your code should be scalable, extendable, so that these optional requirements can be added. But even if you are not able to, that is well and good. Okay. So starting with the solution. Starting with the solution, first I will have to give you a basic idea of how I am structuring the entire code in different files, in different packages, in different, you can say, classes. So obviously there are three tier architecture which is generally followed in product-based companies, in big tech giants and startups also. What is the three-tier architecture? It is known as MVC architecture, Model View Controller Architecture, MVC architecture. What is involved? It generally involves three layers or three tiers. What are these three tiers? First tier is the client side application or the presentation layer, which will contain all the views, all the front end, you can say, all the front end that user one will get the view of all the transactions. User two will get the view of all his or her transactions. User three will get all the views of all his or her transactions. So all the users will have different views of the application. They will have the different access. They will have different authentication, different like level of authorization to access the data. So there will be different views. There will be different front end, you can say, user interfaces for different users based on their authorization, authentication, and whatnot. So first one is the presentation layer. You can say it's simply the front end. This is the client side, the user side layer. It will generally, like for our application, for current application, it will, you can say, include the driver code, the input and output code. Input will be from the user only, output will be for the user only. So the driver code is generally, we can say, currently related in the client side application, the presentation layer. And it will be available in all of the packages. The client side code, the driver code will be available in all of the packages. It will be public. It will not be nested inside any of the other packages. It will be public. And I am giving this view, I am giving the driver code name as app.java, application.java. Next, the most important point, the code, the implementation, the logic, the entire business logic of your application will be stored in the middle layer, in the in-between layer. What it will contain? It will contain all the services, all the microservices, all the controllers that whenever I will request you to add expense, what you will do, like uh, which which database will you go, which maybe which model you will go to, which data will you add, which data will you edit. So all those like you can say transactions, all those control statements will be handled, will all those services will be handled by the business logic layer. And we will write all the logic that whenever user is saying, please add this expense, please show all the users, please show all the expenses of a particular user. All those users, all those requests are mapped to which model, to which data, and how we are extracting the data, how we are analyzing the data and printing the data in the view. So all this logic is inside the business logic layer. And third, very important, this is very important, it should be at most far away from the client side. Client should not have the data access. Like data is primary for any for any like product based company. Data is the highest, data is the most important thing, most prioritized thing which they have to be made secure. So all the data access, all the data related things, all the models, all the objects, classes involving the data will be stored in the data access layer. And data access layer generally will interact with the database. For example, RDBMS, SQL, like SQL based applications, maybe Oracle type of applications, or non-SQL also, like NoSQL also, maybe Mongo, maybe Firestore, something like that. So you can use any kind of database, but currently database is not in our goal because we are said that we have to do in memory only. We can store the data in this layer only. Do not create a database. Ignore this database. Store the memory, like store the data, store the objects inside this data access layer only. So this data access layer, or shortly known as DAO layer, it is very, very important. We have to store all the models, all the objects in this DAO layer, DAO, data access object layer. Okay. So this is the basic idea that how you are going to structure your code. There will be services. So there will be a services folder where all your services will be there. All the logic will be there, business logic. All the controllers will be there, you can say. There will be models where all the data classes will be there, like objects will be there involving the storage and manipulation of data. And there will be the front end that is currently app.java will be there. Like in real terms applications, they can be front end HTML, CSS, JavaScript. There can be some libraries also, React library also. But for us, Vue is just a single file app.java. Controllers are stored in services folder, services package, and models are stored in models package. All the models will have some classes and objects. Controllers will have some like linking of the particular request to a particular object, to a particular, you can say, DAO layer model, and uh, getting the response back to the user. So controllers will be acting as a like medium by which a Vue user can give a query and can get a query. Okay, you can expect it as a API, application programming interface. This is kind of a API. It is acting as a medium in between the tier 1 and the tier 3, the Vue and the model. So I hope you basically got the basic idea, because I will be showing you the pre-written code, because if I am going to write the code from scratch, you will be like, it will take a lot of time, because generally the interviews are 2 hours. And if I am giving a 2 hour interview, so it will take a lot of time, maybe 50% of the time, to just write the code. So I'm not showing you the code. I'm not writing the code from scratch. I will be showing you the pre-written code which I have written. I have taken references from the official solution from where I have taken the problem statement, and I have like implemented some knowledge which I have been like, which I have about design principles, design patterns, and object-oriented programming principles. Okay. So going to the solution will be available. This entire code base, the application will be available to you uh, in my GitHub profile. So you can check out my GitHub profile. I will be sharing the GitHub profile in the video's description link, or maybe in the chat box. So you can check out the code, but I am currently showing you the chat. Sorry, not the chat, but I am showing you the code in the VS Code. I am using VS Code as a terminal. So I will be showing you the entire code here only. And don't worry about all the class files and the Java source code files are in the same package. Obviously, class files will be separate. The source code file will be separate, but current focus is not on Java development. The current focus is on low-level system design. How we are using object-oriented programming principles to divide the entire code in different packages, separation of concerns, models, like the DAO layer, then services, the controller layer, all the in like interaction between the Vue and the models, and finally the app, the front end. So first, let us discuss about the front end. So front end, like you generally have to not write the front end as a first class. Obviously, you have to first think about the design. First, write the design on a paper and then start coding. So first, you will not start the coding from front end from the app.java file only. Why? Because if you will start, it will obviously use like controllers. It will have the access of controllers. It will not have the access of models. But currently, since we are taking all the users hard coded, we are having some dummy users. So I am importing the direct models package only. I am directly using users data, users class. But it is not like recommended. It is not a better way to have the entire models in your front end only. There are 3 layers. Like the client side layer should not directly interact with the models layer. Similarly, the models layer should not directly interact with the client side layer. So currently what we are doing, The front end is directly interacting with the database. It is directly interacting with the models. So it's not going to be there. But for the sake of simplicity, I have taken it. It is not the perfect solution, I know, but it is better for understanding purposes. Okay. So what is the main, you can say main app.java, main function, the first function which is going to run the input and output. First, you will using the user service. I will show you the user service. Don't worry. Using the user service, I am adding some users before starting the application, before running the input and output. I am adding some 4 dummy users as discussed in the sample input output. Those 4 users are having user ID as U1, U2, U3, U4 to uniquely identify them. Then there is Sita, Sham, Ram, Balram as the names of those users, because according to the problem requirement, remember, according to the problem requirement, we have 4 requirements with respect to user. What are those 4 requirements? So if I go to requirements, user should have a user ID, a name, an email, and a mobile number. These 4 requirements were there. So I have made a constructor with respect to those 4 requirements only. One is the user ID, one is the name, one is the email ID, and one is the phone number. All 4 I have taken currently as strings. Okay, so I have taken some dummy users. So I am now showing you the users module, the users model. So this is the user model. It is a simple class, a simple enough class. Why? There are 4 properties: ID, name, email, phone. 4 properties defined in the problem statement only, defined in the requirements only. And since like it is better to have private variables, so I have created getters and setters for each of the variables. Getters and setters for each of the 4 variables, and constructors, one empty constructor and one, you can say, a parameterized constructor. So it is a simple Pojo class. It is a simple plain old Java object class, Pojo class, which is following some basic OOPS principles that data should be private. The member functions, the getters and setters should be public. Getters and setters should be public. There should be a parameterized constructor for like custom input output, and there should be a default constructor for like if the user does not input any ID, name, email, phone, so all will contain null. So you should have a default empty constructor as well. So it is a simple class of user, simple model of user containing 4 properties as discussed in the question. So let us like draw the user diagram as well. So in the diagram, this is the first class which we can say first model. The first model is of user. First model is of user. So user is containing 4 properties, which is ID, name, email, and mobile. Although we are not doing anything currently with respect to email and mobile, but as you know, like we have to write a solution so that it can easily be actually implemented, actually used in a real life application. And we are doing it. Why? Because they have asked us to do so. They have asked us to take email and mobile number as parameters, as properties. And there are getters and setters and constructors, that is the functions involved with this user. So generally basically in class diagrams, you write a class like this only. You write the class name, you write the properties, and you write the member functions involved in it. So this is the first simplest class. All the properties are nothing but private. All the getters and setters are nothing but public. So private is minus, public is plus. Okay. Now this is like simple enough user class. What we are doing, adding some users, some dummy 4 users. Now starting the input, starting the entire input. What is the entire input? We are taking one line as an input according to the input format, according to the sample input. We are taking one line as input. First input is show, next input is show U1, then next input, then next input. So there are different lines of input. So I am taking entire line as input, and I am like splitting it based on uh, spaces in between, and there will be an array of strings which I can use. So you can check out this code later on, but I am just explaining you the overview. What is it? If it is a query of show, that we are, the query is please show the balances of either one particular user or all particular users. So what we are doing, if it is for one particular user, show all the show. If it is not like any one particular user, if params.length is one, if it is only show, after show it is nothing else in the input. So you have to show all the balances. Otherwise, if params dot length is 2, like there are two inputs, show, then the user ID. So whatever is the user ID, you have to show the balance of dot of that user ID, of that particular user ID. So this is simple enough that this is the input output, what you have to do for show input. For show, if if the input is only show, so show all the balances of all the users. Otherwise, show the balances of a particular given user, of a particular given user, using the show balance service, using this controller. Okay, next. Now this is little bit larger. This is little bit larger. You have to like have a good basic understanding of Java programming fundamentals. So expense is the next input. What we are doing in expense, we are having a person who is giving the amount as discussed in the sample input. One is the creditor ID, like who is giving the amount, who is giving the amount. Expense, who is giving the amount. U1 is giving the amount. U1 is giving the amount. U4 is giving the amount. The first thing is who is giving the amount. Next thing, how much amount he is giving, total amount. Next thing, how many users are involved in the transaction? Like how many users? There are 4 users. There are 2 users. There are 4 users. So how many users are debtors? How many are giving the amount? How many owes the amount to creditor? And using a controller, using a service, as I discussed earlier architecture, using this controller, you are going to basically add all the debtors in an array, in an array list, in an array list. Okay. Then in that, all the users, you are going to mention a expense type. Now this expense type is also important. So let us first discuss about expense type. Then I will like come back to this entire piece of code again. So when going to expense type logic, expense type class. So this expense type class is a enum. It is not exactly a class. It is a enum. What does enum means? Enums are constant, like they contain related, interrelated constants. So we have an expense type, like which kind of expense is there? Is it equal? Is it exact? Or is it percent? So next class, next model is nothing but enum, which is a expense type. Which type of expense? So let me just create the enum. Let me just create the enum. Okay. So this is expense type. Next model is expense type. And expense type, what we are having? We are having 3 types of constants. One type of constant is nothing but we can say equal. One type of enum of expense type is nothing but exact. And the third type is nothing but percent. It is percent. These are the 3 types of input as in the sample input as discussed. Now, what are the values? Like equal, exact, and percent will have 2 functions. What are those 2 functions? One calculate amount and one validate function. Now listen very carefully. One calculate amount and one validate function. What does it mean? In the input, listen very carefully. In the input, we have in the entire input the total amount. And if the input is equal, all users will have to exactly divide 1000 by the number of users, 4. So all users will have to give 1000 divided by 4, 250 rupees. So this logic of calculating the amount which U1 have to give to U1, U2 have to give to U2, U1, U3 have to give to U1. So this logic is written in the calculate amount logic. Why? Because this calculate amount logic is different for different input. So it is different for equal, it is different for exact, it is different for percent. For equal, it is simply 1000 divided by 4. That is the total amount divided by the number of users, the number of debtors. For exact, how much amount U2 have to give? Simply it is mentioned 370. U3, simply 880. For percent, how much U1 have to give? 1200, 40%. 1200, 20%. 1200, 20%. So this logic of how much amount this debtor have to give to this creditor, this is based on what type of input is it. It is equal, is it exact, or is it percent? So what we are saying in the code, let us see what we are saying in the code. We are saying if the type is equal, so in equal, what we are saying, how much amount one person is giving? Total amount divided by the number of people. 1000 divided by 4, 250 rupees each. If there are 4 users, total amount which they have to give is 1000 rupees. So each will be giving 1000 by 4, 1000 by 4, 1000 by 4, that is 250 rupees each. So this is simple for equal. For exact, simply whatever the amount is, simply return that. If user one have to give 330 rupees, okay. User two have to give 880 rupees, okay. Simply whatever is the exact amount, you have to give that much amount to the particular creditor. And for calculate amount in percent type of input, what we are saying, the amount which he have to give is the total amounts that much percentage. That is that much 40% divided by 100%. That is 0.4 ratio of total amount, 0.2 ratio of total amount, 0.1 ratio of total amount, whatever. So total amounts that much percentage split the debtor have to give to the creditor. So these three functions are overridden. These are overridden because this calculate amount is an abstract function. So we have implemented some object-oriented programming principles. This function is abstract, so we have implemented abstraction. These functions are overridden, like this abstract function is overridden. So this is nothing but polymorphism. This is runtime polymorphism, method overriding. So obviously there will be a lot of oops concepts involved. So you are, if you are not that much good with object-oriented programming principles, uh, like you might not get the entire logic, but you can have a basic idea. You can get a basic idea that what we are trying to do. Okay. So in equal, what we are saying, calculate amount will have different logic. It will have different overrided functionality. It will have different overrided functionality. Percent will have different overrided functionality. These three will have different functionalities. Why? Because the type of expense is different. In equal, simply divide the total amount by number of users. In exact, simply return the amount which is mentioned, exact amount which is mentioned. In percent of total amount, how much percent if we have to give, that much amount we are returning. So this is the calculate amount. Now, what is the validate function? Now, validate is out of all the splits, I will discuss the split function, this split class as well. But among all these splits that U1 have to give, U2 have to give, U3 have to give, U4 have to give, add the total amount if it is valid or not. Like let us go back to the input. U1 have to give 250 rupees. U2 have to give 250 rupees. U3 have to give 250 rupees. U4 have to give 250 rupees. So 250 plus 250 plus 250 plus 250, is it equal to 1000? Yes. So valid. Valid. Obviously, equal will always be valid. In exact, is 370 plus 880, is it equals to 1250? Yes. So this is also valid. In 40% of 1200, that is how much? 480, I guess. 480 plus 240 plus 240 plus 240, is it equals to 1200? Okay, valid. So this is what we have done in the validate function. Take the sum of all the splits. If the sum of all the splits, if it is equals to total amount, so good, it is valid. I have not directly like checked if some split is equals to total amount, because since it is double, so I have taken the margin of like 0.1. If they are equal, if they are uh, equal with respect to one decimal place, if they are correct, equal almost till one decimal place, I am treating them equal. I am treating them equal. Why? Like for example, if I am saying total amount is 100, person one split is 66%, person two split is 33%. So obviously person will get 66 rupees, person two will get 33 rupees per, like 66.6, 33.3, let's suppose like this. So total amount will be 99.99. It is not exactly equal to 100. So it will say false, but it is not actually false. You can say it is good enough. 66% of 100, 66.66, 33% of 100, 33.33. So it is good enough, no problem. So right, return true. That's why I have taken a margin of 0.1. That if they are good with one decimal place, they are equal. If the sum of all the splits, if it is equal to total split till one decimal place, it is a valid transaction. It is a valid input. Okay. So these are two functions involved with expense type. And three types of expense are currently there: equal, exact, and percent. It is a enum. So in we can say in the expense type, actually we do not have any data member, but you can have two data members. If you know about enum, there is a name, there is an ordinal. But if you do not know about enums, no problem. Actually, there is the constant, which is the constant. These three are the constants. And what is the index? This is zeroth index, this is first index, this is second index. So there is name and there is ordinal. And there are two functions. Those two functions are basically uh one is calculate amount, calc amount, that how much amount one person have to give to the total, to the creditor after the out of the total, based on equal, exact, or percent. Every enum concept have different type of implementation of calc amount. And second function is validate. It is same for all the three types. If the total amount of all the sums of all the users, of all the debtors, if it is equal to the total amount, yes, it is valid. So this is the second class. This is the second class, which is expense type. Okay, these are the two models we have discussed till now. I hope like maybe 70-80% till now it is getting clear. If you have doubts, please write in the chat section. Uh, like those who have the knowledge of OOPS, they will be easier to get this entire architecture, get this entire coding, because it is not a simple code. Like it is not data structure algorithm code, which we generally write in lead code type of questions. It is something different from that. Okay. Let's like first discuss all of the models, then we will go to the services. So the split. In split, actually we have not much. What we have only two variables. What are those two variables? Split is nothing but debt. Like who is giving the amount? Who is giving the amount? Who owes the amount? So who is owing the amount? What is his user ID? And how much amount he owes? How much amount he owes? So for example, if I show you in this particular input, what is the split? Split is containing U1 owing to 50 rupees. So two variables. U2, user ID. Second thing, how much amount he owes? 250 rupees. U3, user ID. Second thing, how much amount he owes? 250 rupees. U4, user ID. Second thing, how much amount he owes? 250 rupees. In this, U2, the user ID. How much amount he owes? 370 rupees. User ID, amount, user ID, amount 480, user ID, amount 240, and so on. So two things are there in split, that who is the debtor, that who owes the amount, and how much amount he owes, or how much amount he owes. And based on this, we have two functions, getter and setter for user ID, getter and setter for amount, obviously, like simple class. So this is the third class. I'm not taking any screenshot, but I am going back to the like UML diagram. So this is the third class, a simple enough class again. The split, that is who is the debtor. It is for debtor, who owes the amount, who owes the amount. I hope like my English is not so fast and I am fluent enough. I am able to convey the logic which I want to. So third thing is uh, the split, one particular split, and it is containing the debtor ID, or you can say the user ID who owes the amount, and it contains the amount which the user owes to the particular creditor. And there are getters and setters again. There are getters and setters again. So this is the third model. Again, this name and ordinal is private. These functions are public. Here, user ID and amount is private. Getters and setters are public. That is followed everywhere. So this is the third model. Okay, so let me just make this little below. So these are models. Currently, we are discussing about models, the data access layer, DAO layer. Okay, so we have discussed about user, we have discussed about expense type, we have discussed about split. This is what I have implemented. You might implement it different way. There can be hundreds of different implementation for the same problem statement. And neither I am correct or wrong, nor you will be correct or wrong. Your solution will also be correct. My solution will also be correct. There is nothing like right or wrong in system design. So this is one of the possible implementation which I feel is good enough, which is kind of clean code. Okay. So third thing, we will discuss the DAO layer, exactly the DAO class, lastly, because it will be containing all the logic, the entire logic of showing the balances, of adding the expenses. It will be containing the entire logic. And it is the most important business logic class or the model in our entire application. So we will be discussing the model DAO layer in the last. First, let us discuss the services. So there are three services. What I told about services, services are a kind of layer in between the models, in between the data and the application user and the front end, the presentation layer. So let us discuss about show balance. So show balance, you can see it is like we are starting the class and we are ending the class. What is it containing? It is having, it is composition has a relationship. It is not implementing or extending. There is no implementation or there is no extending. There is no inheritance, but it is having a composition relationship. It is composing the DAO layer. It is composing the balances. and there is a constructor. There are two functions, show balance and show all balance. So user will be saying show balance. Please show me the balance of this particular user ID. Okay. What the controller will do? Controller actually will do nothing. It will just simply call the model. It will just simply call the model, the DAO layer, and it will say to DAO layer that please show the balance of this particular user ID. If user is saying show all the balances, currently I am not doing anything. I am just simply saying, okay, DAO layer, please show all the balances. So actually, like currently it is not having anything, but it is having a object of the DAO. It is having an object of data of all the logic of all the models. It is having an object of data, DAO layer, which is balances. And in that balances, it is just calling the function balance, show balance, and it is just calling the function show all balances. So this is the like first function, show balances, and this is first of the controller. This is the simplest controller. Okay, so I am not showing you the services. I am not showing the controllers here because it is self-explanatory. It is just acting as a medium. Just it is getting the request and it is delegating the request to the model. ये सिर्फ request ले रहा है और इस request को आगे भेज रहा है. That's it. It is just getting the request and delegating the request to the DAO layer, acting as a medium. Similar goes for the user service. So it is just getting the accept. It is getting the accept the request accepted, that is get user, and add user, and it is just delegating the request to the users layer, to the DAO layer. Okay. And similarly for expense service, it is containing some other functions as well. Like what all expense will contain? It will contain the creditor ID, who is giving, like who is giving the total amount, how much amount he is giving, what all are the debtors, user 1, user 2, user 3, user 4, how much amount they are owing, 250 rupees, 250 rupees, 250 rupees, 250 rupees. So a list of splits. And what is the type of expense? Is it equal expense? Is it percent expense? Is it exact expense? So what is the type of expense? What is the type of transaction? What all are the debtors involved? What is the creditor involved? Who is the creditor? And how much amount the total transaction is? So there is a constructor, a parameterized constructor, and again there is a add split function, just a controller, just calling the DAO layer. A set amount, just calling the DAO layer, just calling the calculate amount which we currently discussed. And get a type, set a type, add expense, just calling the DAO layer. But in add expense, it is important. In add expense, what we are doing? We are saying if the transaction is invalid in the DAO layer, in the models layer, there is a validate function which we have shown. There is a validate function. So in validate function, we are first checking if it is invalid, if the transaction is invalid. If it is false, so print invalid splits and return. Otherwise, if it is valid, so add the expense. So do the transaction. अगर transaction invalid है, so invalid. If the transaction is valid, okay, it is valid. Add the expenses. So this is the entire service. 3 services are there. 3 controllers are there. First controller, expense service. Second controller, show balance service. Third controller, user service. So please go through the code after the live session, after this recording, after the YouTube live. Please go through this code, read the entire code, try to debug the code, or try to basically run the code on some sample input, and try to think how it is calling, how the function is calling the second function, how second function is calling the third function, which class is calling which class function, which class function is calling which class function. Essentially, what is the flow? App.java is calling services. Services are calling models. So it is a flow, as we discussed 3-tier architecture. App is calling the controllers, the services, and controllers are basically uh, accessing the data and performing the operation. Okay. So like split expense service, I want to discuss it again because this is like little bit larger. First, this is the constructor. Constructor, let's minimize. These are the functions. Just a controller, just interface that whenever user will say add this particular debtor, add debtor. Set the amount of a particular debtor, that 40% of total amount, or exact amount of 370 rupees, or equal amount of 1200 divided by 4. So whatever is the type of transaction, based on that type of transaction, set the amount. Whatever is the type of transaction, add the expense. Like after all the splits are done, add the expense in the database, in the data. So these are the functions in the expense service class. Okay. Now, Let us go back to the app.java. Then finally we will discuss the DAO layer. See, in the expense, how we are taking the input. Like you can read this on your own, but I am trying to discuss it. Maybe you might be able to get the logic. We are saying three inputs will be there: creditor ID, total amount, debtor count. As the input is suggesting, first take the person who is giving the money, then take how much money he is giving, then take the number of people he's owing, like he owes, he will have to get the money, and what is the type of transaction. So first thing is creditor, who owes, like who will be getting the money, how much money he will be getting, from how many users he will have to get the money, and then we are creating a controller, and I am passing the creditor, I am passing the total amount, I am passing the debtor count in the controller. Then I'm adding all the splits. I'm adding all the debtors in the controller. Similarly, I'm adding the type. If it is equal, if it is percent, if it is maybe exact. And whatever is the type, I am adding the related information. If it is equal, so simply information is how many users are there. So I can simply divide the total amount by that many users. Otherwise, I have to take, if it is exact, I have to take the exact amount, 378, 80. Otherwise, if it is percent, I have to take the percentage, 40%, 20%, whatever. So I have to take the related information, and based on that, I can add the expense. I can call the controller add expense function. Please add the transaction. If this transaction is valid, please add this in the database. Please do the transaction. Okay. So this is the expense. Otherwise, if the input is invalid, if it is not show balance or show all balance. Also, if it is not expense, so in the default switch case, we are quitting the application. Application is done. So this is a simple, we can say, if we will like reduce this, if we will disclose this, close this, and if we are trying to see, this is a simple switch case program, a menu driven program. Based on input, we are having two cases: show or expense, two type of queries. If the queries are not show or expense, so simply quit the program, quit the application, and then just finally like close the input output and end the terminate the program. And we have like wrapped this entire program in try block. That is, if some error occurs, so you can add a catch block here and you can handle that exception. So you can do exception handling using try catch. But currently I have just had a try block and a finally block. You might not know exception handling, so I'm not discussing that. You can omit this. It is your your wish. You can omit this entire try finally block, and just you can simply write this block, whatever inside, whatever thing is inside the try block. Okay. So finally, let us discuss the DAO layer, the last model, the DAO layer object, the DAO class. So first thing, how we are adding the users. First thing, we are creating some dummy users. So how we are adding some users. We are creating a map for user one. I am storing the entire details of user one. So string versus user. User one will contain all the details of user one, the ID, the name, the phone, and the email. User two will contain all the details of user two. User three will contain all the details of user three. User four will contain all the details of user four. So in add user, what you are getting, what you are saying, in that particular ID, add the entire user. And also in balances, like what is balances? Balances is what we discussed. These are the balances. These are balances. This is what we discussed. These are balances. So in balances, in the U1 balance, add an empty hash mark. So I will discuss this balances shortly. This entire DAO class shortly. Uh, Maybe you can try to read the code. Maybe you can try to read the code on your own. I will be discussing this based on sample input and output. And after this, I will be discussing the follow-ups. Okay. So it is getting a little bit hectic. It is getting a little bit complex, I know, but this is what machine coding round is. You have to create classes in different packages, and there will be app.java calling controllers, calling services, and those services using the models to respond back to those requests. Okay. So let us finally discuss the DAO layer in detail. Let us finally discuss the DAO layer in detail, all this logic. The entire logic is present here. Remaining all the classes are just for request, response, and all of that. This is the entire code which is serving the entire business logic. Okay. You can divide this entire code in different classes, but I am particularly currently writing the entire code in the same file. I know this DAO layer class is having a lot of code, but it is good enough because nevertheless you have still divided the entire code in different classes: DAO class, expense type class, split class, user class, all those services: expense service, show balance service, user service, and the driver for the main function, the app.java class. Okay, so let us go back to the DAO class and try to understand what is happening in DAO class. What is happening in DAO class? So DAO class is little bit larger. It is little bit linear class. All these class were smaller class: user, expense type, and split. But the main DAO class is little bit linear. It is linear. Okay, so the now most complex layer of this entire, we can say, entire system, or the most complex class of the system is the DAO class, where the entire logic is depending on, where the entire business logic is written. Although I am again telling you that we do not, it is not necessary that we entire logic should be written here, but you can basically write what all logic I have written for get user, add user. You can write directly in the service class only, like the user service class. Similarly, for add expense function, you can directly write this logic in the, you can say, expense service class. Similarly, show balance and show balances, you can write in the show balance service. So I have written all the logic inside this DAO layer class, but you can write it in those respective services classes, those respective controller classes as well. It is your wish. uh, and better will be to write these codes in those respective classes so that it is entirely like structured. It is entirely broken up into different modules. Currently, we can say we have respect, like with respect to the modules and with respect to like models, services, and the driver code, the app, we have structured our code. We have used inheritance, and we can say we have also used composition, both in terms of when we were discussing about expense type. We have basically done kind of inheritance here, uh, where we can assume that expense type is the parent class. Like we can assume like enum expense type is the parent class. It has three children, equal, exact, and at percent, and each of them have different overrided functions calculate amount. We can also have different overrided functions for validate, but I basically tried to have the validate function similar for all the three type of expense types. But you can also make this abstract and you can override them in the respective expense types. So this is kind of inheritance which is happening. Now, when we talked about when we talked about expense, so in expense, like not expense, but when we talked about expense service, in expense service, we have a list of split. So split is also a class and expense is also a class. So it is like composition. You are composing. And also in every service class, you are also composing a DAO object. You are basically composing. You are having a data member. You're having a property named as expenses, which is of DAO type. Similarly, for show balances, you are also having a DAO type reference variable, which is balances. And here also you have a DAO type reference variable, which is users. So now we have to discuss about DAO only. That what is this DAO? First of all, see, you will like a lot of places you will see that this kind of code is there. This kind of code. What is this particularly? See, the constructor is private. Constructor is private, and there is a get instance function which is basically doing what? It is returning an instance variable of the own type. That is, it the instance variable is of DAO type only, which is initially to null. If it is already null, we are creating an instance and then returning it. Otherwise, if it is not null, we are directly returning the instance. So essentially what is happening? Since the constructor is private, no other class, no other function can call the constructor of DAO class outside DAO class because it is private. And also get instance is also doing what? It is only creating the instance if it is already null. So we are actually creating the instance only once. So it is a singleton design pattern. We are implementing a singleton design pattern that we are creating a DAO instance only once for the entire program execution. We are only creating a single DAO instance. Why? Because obviously data should be consistent. There should be only one copy of data, like similar one. single instance of data should be present only once. That's why if like expense service is also using DAO layer, show balance service is also using DAO layer, and user service is also using the DAO layer. All the three classes, all the three service, all the three controllers are using the DAO layer. And if they are in the constructor, if they are making new objects, so obviously it will be like inconsistent data for different objects. There will be different hash map which we have, like which you can see here. So it will have like majorly you can see there will have different hash maps. There will have different data objects present for each expense service for each you can say controllers, and it will lead to inconsistency. So what we are saying we can implement a singleton design pattern. This is not the only solution, but this is also a solution which you can try. We can say we can implement the singleton design pattern so that there is only a single copy of DAO instance, only a single copy. For example, in this, we are saying in this expense service, in the basically in the expense service, in the constructor, if we open the constructor, we are saying that expenses equals to DAO dot get instance. So get instance is only returning a single copy. If it is null, it is creating a object. Otherwise, if it is returning the same object, if it is already created. Similarly, if you show get the constructor of show balance, it is also calling DAO dot get instance. And here also for user service, it is also saying DAO dot get instance. And you are saying DAO dot get instance, class name dot get instance. So basically, you have to make this get instance and also this instance variable both static variables. This is the like main feature or the main concept of singleton design pattern. Okay, coming to DAO. First of all, what is this map of users? I have already told you. Map of users will be containing a string versus user. So string will be the string ID, the user ID of that user, and corresponding to the string ID, the user ID, there will be the user's entire data, phone number, mobile number, and the string ID itself also, and also fourth thing will be the name. All these three things will be present in the user object. So in get user and add user, what we are doing? We are basically simply returning the corresponding user from the map using basically using the hash map get operation, which is constant operation in average case. And similarly, add user is doing what? It is first adding users dot put user dot get ID in corresponding to that ID. We are adding the user. Why? Because we are going to like maintain a balances. We have to maintain a balance sheet. Okay. So let's discuss about this balance sheet. What is this balance sheet? I am saying it is map of string, and exactly what kind of map are we implementing? Map is an abstract type. We are implementing map using hash map. So map of string versus we can say the third value is the double value, the amount. Map of string comma double, uh, and we are naming it balances. Okay, so what does this map? The key of outer map contains this string is nothing but the creditor. It is the creditor who have to get the money, who will be getting the money. What is this string? This is nothing but the debtor who will have to give the money, who will have to give the money. Let us confirm also. So basically in add expense, what we are saying in add expense, first outer map for outer map key, we are using the creditor ID. So we can confirm that this is nothing but creditor ID. String is the creditor's ID, and this string is nothing but the debtor's ID. What does it mean? If I am saying these are the transactions which we discussed during the dry run, so let me first copy all these transactions. If these are the transactions currently in your database, so how these transactions will be stored in the map of map? It will be stored like U2. If U2 is the debtor and U1 is the creditor, like U2 will give money to U1. U2 owes money to U1. U2 owes U1 250 plus 370, whatever the total amount is. So in the hash map, how it will look like? In U1 hash map, there will be a key of U2, and U2 will have a key of that. U2 key will have a value of 250 plus 370. The outer map key U1, the value of outer map will be a map of string comma integer or double, sorry, and the one particular value in that hash map, in the inner hash map for U1 key of the outer hash map of the creditor will be U2 as a key, that U2 is the debtor, and the amount which he have to give to U1, the creditor, is nothing but 250 plus 370. Similarly, so if we talk about all the transactions, so let me just first remove this tick marks. and also remove this entire thing. So these are all the transactions which are available currently. So we have discussed this. Now next, U3 is also owing to U1. So in U1 hash map, U3 is also owing to U1. So U3 will be a debtor, U1 still will be a, you can say, creditor only, like who have to get the money, who is crediting the money, who is giving the money. So U3 will have to give back the money of how much? Of, according to the problem sample input, 250 plus 880. So this will be the next key value pair. Next key value pair for the corresponding creditor. Same creditor U1. So this is also done. Next, U1 is giving money to U4. So where it will be stored? In U4 hash map. In U4 hash map, we are going to store a key value pair, which is U1 is giving money to U4. How much? 480 minus 250. So U1 is giving money how much? 480 minus 250. So this will be the key value pair stored in the key U4 of outer map. And last two transactions, U2 is giving money to U4. So U4 is the creditor, U2 is the debtor who have to give the money, who have to get the money. So in U4, I will again add one new key, which is U2 also have to give him the money. And how much? 240. And finally, U3 also have to give the money to U4. So U4 will get the money from U3 also. And how much? It will be 240. So these are all the transactions for U4 hash map, for U1 hash map, and we can say for U2, U3, U5. If we are only storing like the positive amounts, that U1 will be the creditor, U2 will be the debtor. So U2, since he does not have to get any money from anyone, so his hash map will be empty. Similarly, U3 hash map will be empty, U4 hash map will be empty. And how can we say it is empty and it is not null? Because in the constructor, in the add user, we are saying in the corresponding user as a creditor, add a new empty hash map. So for U2, there will be empty hash map. No debtor will be there for U2. U2 will have to get no money from anyone. It will have U3 also will get no money from anyone. U4 will also not get any money from anyone. So these are empty hash maps. So this will be the state of the hash map after all these 5 transactions. This is what we have to maintain. And how we are maintaining it, we can see it. So if we are first discussing about show balances, like show balances little bit easier. What we are doing in show balance? First, we are running a loop on all the key value pairs of that particular user for which we have to get all the balances. And we are searching for all the debtors, and then we are printing the balance that whatever debtor is, whatever amount he have to give to the current user. And if there are no balances for that particular user, so you have to print no balances. And if the question is not for a particular user, if it is for all the users, so what you are doing? First, you are running a loop on all the creditors, and for that creditor, you are running a loop on all the debtors. That is all credit debt pairs, all user one, user two pairs, all the left hand side, right hand side pairs. So this is nothing but show balance for a particular user. This is nothing but show balance for all the users. And both are using this print balance function, which is if use amount is negative, it means like user one owes money. User one owes money from U2, and how much amount of money we can take the absolute amount. Otherwise, we can like negate the things. We can change the things opposite way. So this is simple enough. These 3 functions are simple enough. These are used by show balance service. I already talked about the user service. Now the only thing remaining is expense service. So expense service is having one function which is add expense. And what is add expense doing? Add expense is first taking the debtor, like who is the debtor. We are calling the add expense for all the debtors. We can see in the expense service, we are calling the add expense for all the debtors, all the splits. If U1 have to get money from U2, U3, U4. So for U2, U3, U4, this loop is running. And we are saying that for all expenses, for all splits, for all the splits from all debtor, comma creditor, we are calling the function add expense. So in add expense, what we are saying? We are saying who is the creditor? Okay, put the basically if there is no key present, if this debtor have, if this creditor do not have any money, if this creditor, for this particular creditor, there is no key value pair of corresponding debtor, like if creditor is U1, if in U1 hash map, if there is no key value pair of U2 comma the amount, that is U1 is the creditor, U2 is the debtor. So if there is no U2 as a debtor in the hash map of U1, So first create a key value pair. First create a key value pair that debtor have to owe 0.0 rupees. Then you can add the amount. Then you can basically add the amount, whatever you have to add, whatever amount you have to give, whatever the amount debtor have to give to creditor. You can basically skip this line because I have used get or default. Like I maybe like have not think of that since I have already used get or default, you can omit this if condition. Similarly here also you can omit this if condition because get or default will be working fine for get or default explicitly. So we can write this much code only. This will also work. Why? Because we are saying get or default. If there is already some value, so add the current amount which he owes. And if it is not there, so U 0.0. Similarly, we are also adding the corresponding same transaction vice versa also. Like currently what we are saying, U2 owes this much money to U1. So same transaction will be occurring in U2's hash map. Currently I have not shown the opposite transaction, but same transaction will be occurring in U2's hash map. That is U2 will also be containing a U1 key value pair, and U1 will be saying that I do not owe money, but I have to get money. So it will be negative. So it will be negative 250, negative 370. It will be like that. So one transaction will be occurring twice. One as in the hash map of creditor, one in the hash map of debtor. In both the creditor and debtor hash maps. That is what we are doing in add expense function. So I hope like all these functions are little bit clear. Obviously, it will be 100% clear if you will go through the code and spend half an hour uh, reading the code and doing the debugging and all that. But maybe you have got a basic overall picture of idea that how we are implementing the splitwise algorithm. Maybe we can try to run the code on some applications, like on some test cases. So let us write Java app. So app is now running. If before adding any expenses, currently there are no expenses. Like we have started the application currently. So if we will say show, obviously no balances are there, no transactions are there. If we will show user one, again no users, like no transactions are there. I am just following the same sample input only. Currently, if I say show no users, like no balances, show U1, again no balances. But when I will add expense U1 amount 1000 and this entire statement. So let us write this entire statement that we are adding a new expense. User one is giving 1000 rupees to 4 users. And is this the same syntax? Yes. And those 4 users are him himself, then U2, then U3, then U4, and we have to split it equally. The type of expense will be equal. So after adding this expense, this would have been added if we will print all the expenses, show all the expenses. So these are all the three expenses that whatever the user names were, all of them owe Sita, that is user one, 250 rupees, 250 rupees, 250 rupees. So if we will only print the, we can say only print the expenses involved by user four, which is I guess Balram. So only Balram's expenses will be there. Only Balram's balances will be there, which is Balram owes Sita 250 rupees. User four owes user one 250 rupees. So we can say after adding one expense, if we are printing all the expenses, it will print all of them. Or we can also print for a particular user. Then next, we will add an expense exact. So let us do exact also. If we are adding our expense that U1 is again giving money 1200, let's suppose. Among how many people? Let's take the same exact test case. Among two people. What are those two people? U2 and U3. And we are doing an exact amount 370 and 880. 370. That U2 is giving 370. U2 will have to give 370 and U3 will have to give 880 after the trip. And obviously the total is, I guess, 1200. No, it is not 1200, it is 1250. Okay, no problem. So let us make it 830 in that case. So now it will be 1200. So after adding this expense, if we will say that show all the expenses, so these are all the expenses. If we will say show only expenses related to U3, so it will only print with respect to U3. You can do the calculations. You will be sure, like I am sure that my code is working fine because I have tested it already. So let us do one more percent type. So expense. You let's suppose three now is giving money to whom, or maybe U4 is now giving money. How much? Let's take 4000, and it is being shared by four people again, which is U4, U1, U2, U3, and U4 himself. And in like now let's take percent. So U1 is let's suppose taking 10%, U2 let's suppose 20%, U3 let's suppose 30%. So how much is it? I guess 30, 40, 50, 60, and U4 let's suppose 40%. So after adding this expense, okay, so there is no enum constant percent. So I like typed, I basically mistyped it. It is not PERENT, it is PERCENT. But no problem, like we can run the app again, we can add all the expenses again, or I can directly show you the last expense which I was trying to add. You can basically have a code which is handling all these exceptions so that app does not crash. Currently it is crashing because I have not done exception handling, but you can do it. It is your wish. So expense U4, let's suppose is giving 4,000 rupees to four people, U1, U2, U3, U4, and the type of expense is percent type, and it is 10, 20, 30, 40%. So expenses getting added. Let us show all the expenses. So these are all the expenses: 400 rupees, 800 rupees, 1200 rupees. And if I will, let's say, that add a invalid expression like U3 is giving money for maybe 4,000, maybe 4,000, and two users are giving U3 money, let's suppose U2 and U3, but they are saying that we are giving thousand rupees exact, like let's suppose take exact amount, exact type of expense, and both are giving thousand rupees. So obviously it is an invalid expense. So if we will again print show, so it is doing what? And U3 is getting basically 4,000 rupees, and there are two users, U2 and U3, and it is exact. So 1,000 plus 1,000. And why it is not printing invalid splits? It should print invalid splits. Maybe I have done something wrong. It is actually doing correctly. It is actually adding it, but most probably like it should not add it because total amount is 1,000. No problem. Like I will have to see the code. That there might be some issues, but there might be some issue with respect to validate function. Maybe in validate function I am not adding all the splits or something like that. I will check the code. I will make the changes which I had to. I basically tried the code before recording this video, but if there are some changes which is to be required for this validate function, all the other functions are working properly. Only this validate function needs to be checked. What is the issue? Like it should be printing invalid expenses. So I will no problem. I will see this code and I will update the changes in my GitHub repo. You can check out my GitHub repo, Archit Agarwal, Archit Dash Agarwal, DSA and LLD. In LLD folder, you will find this entire splitwise design algorithm application. Okay, so this was all about splitwise algorithm. This was all about splitwise algorithm. One point more to discuss, that there is a very famous part of the splitwise algorithm, which is simplify the payments. So if I will go to the uh, point where we have discussed the optional requirements. So there was a last point known as simplify expenses. So please, those who watched this video, those who tried to solve the DSA, not the DSA, but splitwise algorithm design problem with me, and they have understood maybe 50%, 60%, 70% of this design problem, and they want a next part of this algorithm, they can ask me to basically make a follow-up of this same algorithm, of the same question only, of the same machine coding round, in order to solve this optional requirement, simplify expenses. Because this optional requirement itself is a very good use case. It is a very good DSA problem involving, you can say, ordered map or using priority queue. It can be done using priority queue. It can be done using ordered map or ordered set also. So this is also a good application of DSA, of data structures and algorithms, and it is also very famous. Simplify the expenses, reduce the number of expenses, minimizing cash flow algorithm. So it is a very famous algorithm. So if you want, I can make a follow-up video on this particular optional requirement. Remaining two, three optional requirements are very easy. Only the last is very good. It is like involving some good logic and good problem solving abilities also. So yeah, that was all about design splitwise. I hope you got a basic brute force idea of how we are going to approach a machine coding round problem, and how we are going to divide the entire structure of code into different modules, different functions, different classes. How classes are going to relate with each other. There are two types: using is a relationship, using has a relationship. There are various design principles, design patterns which you can follow. For example, we have implemented some design principles. For example, composition over inheritance has a relationship can be better in some scenarios over is a relationship in one of particular scenario can be strategy design pattern. So I have kind of implemented a strategy design pattern where I have not extensively used inheritance, but I have more focused on has a relationship, that is having a data member. So this was one design principle which I implemented. Then a design pattern which I showed you was singleton design pattern in DAO layer, where we have created only a single object, a single instance of DAO layer by making the constructor private and all that stuff. So some design principles, some design patterns you can implement in your code if you have time left in order to like show that, in order to flex that I know design principles, I know my stuff, I know what I am doing. You can do that as well. It is your wish. If you are not able to, if the time is remaining less, because as we know that you will be provided 2 hours maximum. So it is not possible to do everything in just 2 hours. So at least what we have to do, we have to meet the requirements as we discussed. We have to meet the mandatory requirements. These mandatory requirements should be met. And I guess we have implemented all of these mandatory requirements at least. So I hope you like this video. If you like this video, you can reach out to me on my LinkedIn profile. I do not have generally like I'm not active on Instagram or stuff, but you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on GitHub as well. Like you can contribute to my GitHub repository if you want. And if you want to explore more with respect to system design, low level design, object oriented design, machine coding now. So I will be making some content as I'm involved with Geekster's recorded content also with respect to these topics. So I will be providing some more content. I can show you the more content which I will be providing. So if I will go towards basically much all this low level design. So first module or first syllabus with respect to this is object oriented programming, like 5 basic pillars as we all know. And then the advanced Java core stuff like packages, exception handling, multi-threading, concurrency, generic collection frameworks, iterable, iterator, comparable, comparator, lambda expressions, enums, all of this stuff. Next stuff comes out to be UML diagrams. So this is a little bit theoretical topic, but this is also important with respect to learning in depth about machine coding rounds and low level design. So how are classes related? What is association? What is aggregation? What is composition? What is generalization? All this stuff. Then comes the design principles. There are some design principles apart from solid like dry, kiss, yagni, sequence, and composition over inheritance, which I told you. Then cohesion and the plane. Then you can say solid principles, of course, and some other principles are also there, which are not that much important. But yeah, I will be trying to record this content. If you want all of this content, you can like write in the comment box or in the YouTube like videos description, that not description but YouTube's comment chat section, that you want these kind of recordings from my side. And then there will be design patterns. Like there are in total 23 design patterns, but among these you can say 10 to 15 design patterns are very important. Like observer is very important, strategy is very, very important, decorator is little bit important, factory is also very important with respect to like uh, use case, you can say. Singleton is important with respect to interviews, but it is not actually used that much in real life scenarios. And there are other patterns also, like maybe we can say bridge pattern is also good enough to discuss. Builder pattern is also good enough to discuss. So there are some 10 to 15 patterns, chain of responsibility, which are good to enough, good to discuss. Okay. Then lastly, after these design patterns, obviously the last is machine coding round, the case studies. So we discussed Splitwise. There are a lot of case studies as I told you. So if you want to have more such free master classes on such topics, please have some interaction in the chat box of the YouTube channel or on the Geeksters portal. I will be happy to make some recorded content, make some quality content on these topics. So let us meet like someday later or sooner. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye. Let's end this session. Bye.